So I am very excited about our last panel. It's a great way to end our conference. And so the title of the panel is Position Yourself for a Winning Career. And so, we talked, there's a lot of information you've heard over the last day and a half that will hopefully help you to put yourself in a great position for a career in sports. But this panel is going to be just a nice capper of that. And we're going to talk about various, things such as networking, which seems to be such a mystery to folks, personal branding and other things that'll be helpful to you too. And so each of these panelists, I do know they're terrific folks. We've had them involved in previous projects, and so you can get a lot of great stuff. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Annie Maravich, who's the Senior Manager of Game Presentation and Events with the Ontario Reign. Welcome, Annie. And then Aubrey Walton, who's the Director of Event Location Strategy and Planning for the National Football League. And welcome, Aubrey. And then Myra Castro, who's the Human Resources Manager for the Los Angeles Angels. Welcome, Myra. And then last but not least, Nohan Cruz, Talent Acquisition Recruiter for Nike. Welcome, Nohan. All right, so let's go ahead and get our panel started. And so I'm going to ask each of you just to start off with a quick introduction of your current job role, and also maybe just one key highlight from your career. And so, Myra, can we start with you?
Sure. Thank you guys for having me today. My name is Myra Castro. I am the HR manager with Los Angeles Angels Baseball. I've been with the organization for almost 9 years. Started as a HR coordinator assistant and have been able to kind of build my HR career here. And I do a lot. I oversee recruitment, so our internship program, although that's currently on hold just because of all the COVID stuff, but employee relations, DEI, trainings. So it's a lot of stuff that's relevant to what you guys are learning, especially on the recruitment side. So I'm hoping to be able to give you guys some good tidbits of information. And the highlight for me, honestly, is every opening day. Obviously, last year was a little bit different, but with the news that we're going to be able to have fans on site, we're really excited. This week it's been crazy. So I'm super excited and, super busy, but I'm glad to, be part of this.
Yeah, and it's cool that it seems like things are starting to come back normal. I'm not sure what normal is anymore, but it's cool that things are starting to look like they're somewhat kind of normal. So very cool. So now I'm gonna jump over to Annie. Annie, can you just give us a quick intro and a highlight from your career?
Sure, thank you. So my name's Annie Maravich. I am the Senior Manager of Game Presentation and Events with the Ontario Reign. So Ontario Reign is the AHL minor league affiliate of the Los Angeles Kings. And let's see. So my role usually involves in running the scoreboard for the Ontario Reign events. It's also helping with all of the game information, making sure that our team works well since we're only a tenant in our normal building, which is Toyota Arena in Ontario. This season, because of COVID, we are playing our games out of our practice facility, which is the Kings practice facility in El Segundo. So there were a lot of protocols and that we had to go through to make that happen, just to get the games up and running. So we're in a pretty good path right now. We're not having fans for the rest of this year, but looking forward to hopefully being back in Toyota Arena next year. And then I guess some highlights last year before COVID struck, we had the AHL All-Star Classic in Ontario, which was incredible. It was great working with the league, learned so much. And then previously when I was part of the Cleveland Indians baseball team, I was part of their playoff runs and got to work a World Series and got an AL Champs ring, which was pretty awesome. So.
Very nice, Annie. Thank you. All right, so Nohan, the gentleman of the group, quick intro and highlight from your career.
100%. I want to say thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here with each and every one of you. Once again, my name is Nohan Cruz. I hail from the wonderful city of Los Angeles, California, and I am the talent recruiter. Now my position has shifted a little bit, so now I oversee pretty much all of California right now. So it's a little much. So these few weeks has been a lot of undertaking, a lot of training. But I think that one of the highlights for me so far in this role that I've been in for the past 4 years, it's really just continually building community. And, it's something that I truly believe in. It's not about the job, it's about the journey. And I'm really grateful for Nike that I've had this moment up until now. And yeah, really excited to deep dive. Thank you once again, Ron.
No problem, Nohan. And I love your LinkedIn posts. You always put such cool things too. And I see your heart in those posts and how supportive you are, of your team and the community. All right, so last but not least, certainly, is Aubrey Walton, and she's actually one of our industry partnership team members, and she's been extremely helpful to us in providing value through this conference. So Aubrey, thank you so much for your help. You just really hustled a lot on our behalf, and I'm just really indebted to you as well. So quick intro and a highlight from your career.
Yes, thank you for those kind words. And thank you again for having me today. So yes, I'm Aubrey Walton. I currently work at the National Football League, specifically in the events department. I've been there about 5.5 years. And prior to that, I was at the Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission, where I actually met Ron. So going on about 10 years of friendship there between us. And my job at the NFL is to focus on all the future event horizons. So what that means is choosing what cities Super Bowl goes to, the NFL draft, the Pro Bowl, so on and so forth, and working with all those cities to see if they can host one of those events. And then once they get awarded, planning those events from start to finish, anywhere from 2 years out to 6 years out. And then some of the highlights, I think the most recent highlight is the Tampa Super Bowl that we just had about 3 weeks ago. Never in anyone's wildest dreams, like the other panelists on here, have we ever imagined we'd be planning a Super Bowl in the middle of a global pandemic. So I would say that experience alone has been such a highlight because it's so unique and nobody's been through it before, and kind of just made things up and prayed a lot. So figured it out and it went super well. So I would say a lot of learnings from that, but definitely a highlight of 2021 thus far.
Very cool. Thank you, Aubrey. Yeah, the Super Bowl was a really great experience. I was actually rooting for the Chiefs, so I didn't quite enjoy it as much as but it was a good experience though. So all right. So next question. I'm sorry. It's going to be sort of a generic question, and a question I'm sure you all have answered, but I know you've had a chance to think through it. So I know the answer I'm going to get from you all is not going to be generic, but just wanted to ask you just to give your thoughts on what skills and traits do you think are essential for success in landing a job in sports? And there's a lot of talk about skills, hard skills and soft skills, but I don't feel that there's enough emphasis on personal qualities, personal characteristics, your traits. And so I'm going to ask you to really share that, embed that in your answer as well. But yeah, just as students are thinking about, I want to get into sports, I want to get an internship, I want to get a job, what skills and certainly what traits, characteristics really make that difference, in getting a job in sports and maybe even being successful in sports. Anyone can jump in on that.
I'll start then. Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things is, when I'm looking to hire people, I'm looking for what have they done outside of the classroom, right? Classroom's great. It gives you a base learning, but you learn so much being out in the field or doing things. So trying to get involved, whether it's sports because you're learning your teamwork aspect. I really like, what people learn through sports teams. You're learning how to get along with people, and everything we do in sports and in life is how do you get along with people? That's going to be so crucial. But especially if you're working in a sports scenario, you're going to work nights, you're going to work weekends, you're going to work holidays, you're going to put in a lot of hours. And so you've got to be willing to put in all that time. So we're looking for people who are driven, and the more you're doing outside the classroom reflects that as well. So those are types of things I look for, people who are going to be good team players, because you're going to need to continue those skills throughout your career. So those are definitely things that I look for when I'm looking to hire folks.
Okay, great. So great team player, drive, and then just doing things outside the classroom. Okay, perfect. All right, who else wants to weigh in on that question?
I think being able to show your organizational skills and how you prioritize. So obviously, when you're in school, you have to prioritize your classes, all of that. But show us, how you prioritize not just your schooling, but your personal life, your job, your volunteer. And this can be anything from, what tools are you using? If you're writing things down in a journal or on a piece of paper, that's valid. Everybody organizes themselves differently. That is sports. You're going to have, competing deadlines all the time, and you're in the middle of 3 deadlines and something else comes up or something changes. So being able to show that you're able to, go with the flow and change your routine if you need to. Work ethic is a big one, so ways that you can show work ethic, like, do you have a lot of siblings? Are you the person that's in charge of, helping your siblings with homework while you're doing your stuff? Like, a lot of times people say, well, like, I don't have a lot of job experience. I don't have the ability to do that. There are skills you're learning in your everyday life. So think about those skills. What are you using? And how is that going to apply to a job? The ones that typically are able to move up and move on in their careers are the ones that just roll up their sleeves and go with the flow. And especially right now, since it's sort of looking like this COVID stuff is, finally there's like a light at the end of the tunnel. Anybody who's been working in sports and has been able to stay working has been doing the job of 3 or 4 people. So believe me when I tell you, when we're going to be looking for people moving forward, we're going to look for people that we think, okay, let's say another COVID hits, who is going to step up and be willing to do this work? So those things are important. Being bilingual. That's another skill. It doesn't have to be Spanish. I mean, depending on your market, Spanish helps a lot. But, in sports, lots of people visit. So if you speak a different language, highlight that. And you can be the person that comes in and, we had somebody that was in our game day staff, and she spoke Japanese. And ultimately that ended up helping her get in front of people, and she ended up becoming an intern and moving up in her career. So you never know. Okay, so just make sure you highlight those things as well.
Thank you, Mara. And one thing I would say before I take any more answers is that, and I usually don't recommend for people to multitask, but panelists, if you aren't speaking and you have things you want to put in the chat, feel free to do so too, just to continue to add to the conversation. So no hand, Aubrey, anything you want to weigh in on that question?
I'll just add one: passion. If you're going to be in the sports industry, you need to have passion for sport. Let it be football, baseball, basketball, hockey, whatever that looks like. There should be a genuine passion that ties to it. And I'll leave it at that. And then Aubrey, if you want to add one more.
You guys hit on everything. I love it. I would agree. I mean, obviously with everything all the other panelists said. I think specific to my experience has been obviously everything that they said, but also more on the networking side. So know that the entire sports industry is very tiny and we all know each other some way or another. So use that to your advantage and also be able to create your brand and reputation in a way that when I'm calling Myra up and saying, interview this person for me, they're really great. Myra knows who I am and knows my work ethic and knows that my name represents this person. So it's a lot of connections that way on how people get hired in the sports industry. So don't ever take that for granted. Everybody, if you know somebody in the sports industry, they know 100 other people that can help you, and we're all connected is the answer.
Great stuff. Yeah, and what you shared is a nice segue to my next question. So, and in some respects, you started to answer the question, but I'm gonna ask you to elaborate. So there's a lot of talk about personal branding. And so the people are out there, you talk about branding, and it's obviously super important. I talk about it, too. And so can you share with how students can really create a compelling personal brand? So yeah, everyone knows that they should work hard. People should be organized. People should be, team players. So, we get that, and that's basic. But if someone's really thinking about, standing out, distinguish themselves from others, how can they create a compelling personal brand, something that's going to really get your attention when, Myra and Nohan, when you're out recruiting, or Aubrey and Annie, when you're just meeting them at an event, what can they do to create a compelling personal brand?
One thing I'll say is do your research, know who you're talking to, right? And then bring a portfolio of ideas or things. But if you're looking at a job or an internship, here's some ideas I have, or here's some things I've liked that you've done with a team, things like that. Whatever you can bring that can set you apart, that makes a difference. It shows you're doing your homework. And something simple after doing an interview, for example, sending a thank you note, that might not determine if you get the job or not, but you're setting yourself up as, you're a person who respects the time of the person that you took. So doing those little things goes a long way. Any way you can showcase yourself is going to put you a step ahead, because a lot of times when you interview 100 people, 99 of them aren't going to bring something. So anything you can do that you can bring, or you can send, or you can showcase yourself, it's going to set you ahead. Absolutely.
Perfect. Thanks, Annie.
Just a small piece off of what Annie was saying. I once, just a personal story that I would like to share. The internship that I had that really set my career off right when I was out of college, or still in college actually, I only got that internship because I was the only person that wrote a handwritten note to my interviewee. The only person out of thousands. And that has always stuck with me, because if I hadn't done that, and that was just me being like thoughtful, I guess, with a handwritten note, I would not be where I'm at today just because of that simple act. So always thank people for their time. And again, off of what Annie said, find that common ground with your interviewees and with other networking people, where they're like, oh yeah, Nohan really likes baseball, and we were talking about the Dodgers. So when I think about Nohan, I'm going to be like, oh, he was the Dodgers fan, I'm going to remember him. So always find that common ground.
Yeah, Aubrey, thank you for sharing that. And I really like that you shared about oh gosh, I just had a brain freeze. I can't believe I had a brain freeze, because you had a great point. Yes, handwritten notes. Yeah, thinking my wife reminded me. Thank you, honey. So handwritten notes too. But it's a small thing sometimes that make a difference, because you can see a lot of candidates who all have, their resumes all look the same. They all have the same kinds of experiences. And so what is it about you that's going to stand out? Sometimes it's a small thing. Sometimes it's a small act, too. So thank you for sharing that. Nohan and Myra, anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I wanted to add, I think when it comes to personal branding, this actually happened to me, right? There's always a saying, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Mm-hmm. And it's even understanding, like, master the fundamentals of what's given to you. Like, that's something that could really stand out for you. I'll give you a quick example. I had the opportunity a year ago in October, in celebration of Latino Heritage Month, an opportunity to be able to, actually taking it back to Juneteenth, we created an internal event that was personalized for all of our employees here on the West Coast. Fast forward, when it was in October, my only job was to be the facilitator. All I had to do was give the intro, transition into the interviews, and then close it out with a final thought. But everything else, like 95% of it, was not me speaking. But that 5%, I understood, again, because I was genuine and authentic and passionate and did my research. It was really quick. And who would have known that my boss sends me a text saying, hey, somebody wants to talk to you. So in my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, I messed something up. and it wasn't that. It was actually someone saying, hey, you captivated me with your energy on screen. You understood your research. You mastered the simple task. I would love to have an informational with you. And this is an executive VP at Nike. So I never thought, like, man, I wasn't even the interviewer or the interviewee. I was just the guy emceeing, welcoming people. But I think that just shows you never underestimate all the little jobs that you're doing, right? Master that, have fun with it. Like, that shows your personal brand of who you are. And I would also say is, like, look at LinkedIn, right? Look at social media. Like, what are you putting out there? You want to be in marketing? You want to be the next person that's doing, PR events, then create it, start a podcast, create small videos, maybe write a documentary, on LinkedIn. You can actually write this stuff. And this is stuff that people can see what you're thinking, your thought process, who that consumer is. So I think for me is like, don't wait for that position, create it already, right? And then when the opportunity comes that you ask for an informational, then people already have an idea of who you are and that you're truly being authentic to that moment of saying, hey, I just want to know your journey. What do you think, the ins and outs? And then they can actually turn the tables and be like, well, actually, I looked you up. Let's talk about what you've written, or I listened to your podcast. I saw you on YouTube. Like, what did you mean by that? So I think like those kind of things really help you as you go forward into, let it be an internship or, going into a job interview, to really kind of like trailblaze your own legacy of being separated from the others.
Great stuff, Nohan. And I just love, just obviously plugging for LinkedIn, but certainly just encouraging the students just to don't wait for the job, but create it, and just put your presence out there too, and do things that people are going to see and remember. And so when you do have that interview, they'll be able to bring it up, So that's great stuff. And Myra, anything you want to add to the question?
Couple things for sports specifically, a lot of times people, especially once you get to a professional level of sports, they think, oh, I don't have that much background in sports. We'll start building that, whether it's in volunteering for the local Little League, they love volunteers. So if you're trying to get into sports, and a lot of times, I'll tell you, a lot of times people who work in sports, in their free time, they have maybe kids or nieces, nephews, they do that. So that's another way to connect with somebody that may have a connection to sports, So find ways to incorporate sports, playing sports. I think, Aubrey, you talked about that, for me, I love that. If you play sports, that's great. Working part-time as game day staff. I mentioned, we've had guest relations or ushers or ticket takers who, they start off in game day staff and they work their way into the front office. So that's another way that you can incorporate sports, into your everyday. At the end of the day, I also think it's really important to always be true to yourself, be your authentic self. You can fake your resume, you can fluff it up, you can make it look great, you can do this, but who I meet or who we meet in person at the interview is who we are ultimately going to hire. So you need to continue to be that person. And if you're faking it, we're gonna notice, if you come in and I'm a hard worker, I'm awesome, I'm this, and the first time somebody asks you to do something and you're like, we're going to know, and it's not going to go anywhere. And like Aubrey said, we know each other. We talk to each other, I'm never going to say, no, don't hire that person, but I'll say, well, you can tell, and most of the time too, is that if you did great in an internship or in your first role, you continue to grow. So, be authentic, be true to yourself. At the end of the day, you're going to make it harder on yourself if you're not who you are. An organization that accepts you and takes you for who you are is going to be the best fit for you as well.
Very cool. So, gosh, you said so much there. And, I definitely, seeds on the volunteering, obviously, because that's great. But just what you shared about being authentic and being genuine yourself, and I know Nohan touched on that too. But, the best person you could be is you. And I know we get caught up with trying to impress others too. But, if you are faking it, at some point you'll be found out. And then, where's it going to leave you? So, okay. So the next question, so we're going to talk about networking a little bit. And networking is one of those words, concepts that tends to terrify people. And people, it's like a mystery. People just don't know, well, how do I really network, and I'm scared to network it, so there's a lot of confusion and, around networking. So I'm going to ask you if you could just advise the students on just some of the best ways to identify people to network with and how to nurture those relationships. And so we've talked a lot about LinkedIn and reaching out to people on LinkedIn, and sometimes your advice about, well, if you reach out to someone on LinkedIn, you know, do it this way or don't do it that way too. So just from your personal experience, what are some of the best ways to, first of all, identify folks in the industry to reach out to? And then secondly, what are some of the best ways to actually do that? And then also to nurture those relationships once you make a connection.
Well,
And
one
then-
thing,
No, go ahead, then.
okay, one thing I'll say is, you know, remember we're all people, right? And we were in your spots before. So I don't know of anyone who won't take the time to help someone out or answer questions. Like, yes, if you contact someone your opening day, for example, if they're in the sports industry, that's probably not a great time to reach out. They're probably going to take time before getting back to you. So one, look at their calendar, right? If it's a sports team, look at their sports schedule and go, okay, this is probably not a good time to talk to someone. Or they have a game night, right? We're not going to respond to someone on a game night, but otherwise, you know, you can reach out and just say, hey, this is what I'm currently doing. I'm interested in. I think you might be, you know, you've been in my area. Can you give me some advice where to go? One thing I always enjoyed having was students come in and shadow for a game. Right now, you can't really do that with COVID, but at some point we're going to get back to that. And, you know, just come and shadow what someone does. And even as a professional in the industry, when I was, especially when I was starting out, but even, you know, I spent 12 years at the Cleveland Indians, I would still reach out to my counterparts in, you know, not only baseball, but in hockey, and go shadow a game, you know, up in at different teams, because I got to see how they were organizing, what skills they were bringing to their teams, learn what they were doing. So even when you're in the industry, continue to do that, but bring, you know, to the table, like, hey, I'm, you know, if it's, for example, from my industry, I'm a video major, you know, I help cover basketball sports. I run replay, I've produced, you know, can you help me, give me some direction, or can you take a look at my resume? Things like that. We're human. We've been in your spots. We're not going to be mean people. You know, most people are going to reach out. They're going to help you. So don't be afraid to reach out. And like I said, when we get back closer to normal, you know, reach out and see what kind of shadow opportunities may be available, because I think it's a great way to kind of see, is this really what you want to be doing? And also, as someone, you know, having a shadow, I get to see who they are. And trust me, I keep them in their information, because, you know, if they're a good person, they're working hard, they seem really intelligent, like that's someone I'm going to want on my game day staff, and see if we can bring them into the organization, you know. So it's a great way for us to also learn about people and see what they bring to the table.
Great stuff, Annie. Very encouraging too. You know, just remind the students that yes, you're all people, you know, and so hopefully that brings some of the pressure down. And just want to thank Myra and Nohan for, you know, answering some of the questions in the chat. So that's very helpful. So you please continue to do that if you can. So anybody else want to talk about networking and demystifying the networking process?
Don't be afraid. You know, again, I think Annie mentioned it. We've all been in your shoes. Do your research first, and you know, when you're reaching out, don't necessarily just be asking for something. It's just an introduction to start with. So, you know, this is who I am, and you know, these are the things I'm interested. I noticed that you work in HR. That's my major. You know, if you ever have time, that type of a conversation, kind of leaving it open-ended to, if you have time, if you're available, here I am, this is my information. You know, I actually was really impressed with somebody, one of your students, Hannah Rosenthal. So, you know, obviously this showcase, the information has been out for a little bit, and, you know, she reached out to me saying, hey, I'm looking forward to the panel tomorrow. And that to me is, there you go, you did your research. Okay, I know who's going to be on this panel tomorrow. I'm going to reach out to them, and I'm just going to introduce myself prior to the panel. And the reason why I think this is impressive is because once this panel is over, I mean, I'm open for, you know, students to reach out via LinkedIn, but it's going to be a lot of you that are going to reach out, right? So those are the little things that I think those are, you know, good things to keep in mind and to take into consideration.
Great example, Myra, and kudos to you, Hannah. Keep up the good work. All right, Nohan, anything to add to the conversation?
Yeah, I think during COVID, one of the biggest, greatest opportunities has been to really reach out, right? You know, a lot of shooting guards in the NBA will say shooters shoot no matter what, right? So you don't know until you take that shot. I think Wayne Gretzky had a famous quote, right? That you only miss 100% of the shots not taken. So it's like you got to make sure that you guys really reach out. And I would just say, here's the thing in networking, and I've currently been going through this. So I've taken on actual 3 mentees. So this year I'm mentoring 3 college students, probably a little bit more than I should have taken. But, you know, as I'm working through that, one of the things that I've been very upfront with these students is really saying like, hey, I hope that we're aligned in what you need me to help and guide you to where you want to get to, right? So they are not necessarily looking to work at Nike. They just saw some things that they can relate to me, and you know, so it was almost like a filling out process. So as you reach out and you're going to be networking with, you know, different professionals and companies, be very intentional, see where you're at currently in your season of what you're trying to attain, and then seek out those mentors. I think that's going to really help you. I speak from my own experience. When I was in college, I remember I thought that this mentor was the one, was not the one. Like, man, it was really bad. And, you know, but it was really bad. But I learned saying, man, I met this guy at a coffee shop, and this person like just saw a book that I was reading from class. And it's like, you know, we're waiting for our coffee at Starbucks, and all of a sudden we just exchange information. Who would have known, right? So again, it's like find that mentor that's aligned to help you get where you need to get to. But many of us said it on here, you have to put in the work. You know, like the ball's in your court, right? So a lot of times if someone tells me, hey, when can we meet? I'm like, you let me know, right? Because I'll make my schedule work around you, but I need you to tell me, right? So again, it's being taking the initiative, being proactive. I think that might help you out in your journey with networking, and just resonating everything that's already been said as well. Spot on.
Great stuff. And what you shared about mentoring is a nice segue into our next question. But this have to be proactive and take initiative. Just can't say that enough, you know. And because there are a lot of folks who want to get in the game, but the folks that are advancing and being successful, they're doing things that other people aren't doing. And so good stuff. So so really to piggyback on what Nohan mentioned about mentoring. So we talk about, you know, find a mentor. Okay, so can you share with students how do you do that, or what's some of the best ways to find a mentor? And then once you find someone, how do you really maximize that relationship? So Nohan, you mentioned obviously some great things about finding someone who's in alignment, you know, with you and your goals. But if you guys can expand on that, how do you find a mentor? What are some best ways? And then how do you maximize that relationship?
I'll start with saying, don't worry about what position the person is in. A lot of times you think, you know, I want to find a mentor that's at the top. They're the director or they're a VP, or, you know, because that's where I want to be. But they had to work their way up as well. So, you know, if your mentor to start with is the, you know, a coordinator or, you know, an assistant or something, that's still good. And actually that's probably better, just because, you know, they were recently in your position and they can really help you and guide you. And then ultimately you're going to have somebody within the organization that can back up, you know, your claims or what you want to do with your career, right? So if you have somebody who's a coordinator mentoring you on how to, you know, kind of get your foot in the door, they're working hard to build a reputation for themselves. And so when, you know, the time comes to apply for an internship or whatever it is, they may be the ones that are going to send your resume to the recruiter or to somebody and say, hey, you know, I've been mentoring this person and like they've got a lot of heart, they're hardworking, whatever it is. And usually the recruiter will remember that person that made the recommendation because they're recently in the organization and they have recently, you know, were recently hired. That's the case for me a lot of the times, is that when I get, you know, recommendations from somebody who's been with the organization for a shorter period of time, I remember them through the recruitment process. So, you know, I feel confident that they know what it's like, and they're going to recommend somebody that can handle, the job.
Great stuff, Mara. Thank you for sharing that. That makes a lot of sense. All right. So, anybody else want to talk about mentoring?
I would just like to add off of what Myra said about the titles. Don't worry about titles. I would say that I'm 35 and I'm a director, and I have mentors that are 25. And I like to state that because there's so much in the world that has happened just for the people that are 10 years younger than me, like all of social media. Like, I'm not the best at social media, but they know everything about social media. So there's things like that that are give and takes, where my knowledge, just being 10 years older, is beneficial to them and vice versa. And so I wouldn't put an age on a mentorship, and I wouldn't put a title on mentorship, because again, like Myra said, go up to the VP, SVP, EVP level, people that have those star jobs that you think shine on every single light. But you have to realize that everybody helped get them to that position, and they also are still learning everything 10, 20 years ago that the people now at that age are the pros at. So just keep that in mind too. It's not an age or a title thing when it comes to mentorship.
Yeah, great stuff.
I want to add to that.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to add to that. Aubrey, that was so spot on. I totally agree with you on that. I've learned a long time ago from a mentor of mine, like, create your own board of directors. So like, see, like, who do you need in your life for, like, maybe like self-care? Who do you need in your life that can help you to make some financial decisions? Who can you seek out, right? So like, diversify your portfolio. We ain't gonna go business kind of like stocks or anything, but that's the approach. It's the metaphor that I learned from a mentor of mine, is like, as much as you diversify your 401k and your stocks, like, approach your work not just professionally, but also personally, right? Someone said it earlier, like, we're just human beings. I think it was Annie. She said, we're all human beings, right? We're people. And I think that if you actually build this portfolio of different people, and it may not even be from the sports industry, it could be an entrepreneur, it could be, maybe a frontline worker, right, in the health industry. Like, you'd be surprised, because I think one of the things that I've learned throughout this whole year is that we need to get better at learning this word that's called empathy, right? And I think that as we learn this word and we apply it in all that we do, both professionally and personally, it really helps you. But for me, it's like, I need to bring someone in that I know that works on that 24/7. So again, I would say, just to add to that, bring as many diverse, right? So when you think about stocks, right, either you want to go aggressive, so it's short term, meaning you may seek someone younger. There is someone on my board that's 27. I'm 44. So there's someone that's 27 that's a designer, and she's a mentor to me, to kind of giving me insights of consumers, right? She's amazing talent at what she does. I have no clue of how she does all that. She has over 18,000 followers on Instagram. I'm like, how? But anyways, the whole point is, I'm just trying to soak and be a sponge and continue to master the fundamentals in the work that I do.
Yes, that's such rich information. And I actually know how you remind me of something that my wife and I joked about, because she's been, really upping her game on YouTube. And so she came across this, I think, this teenager or preteen, it was a middle schooler who has an amazing YouTube profile. And so we're just joking about, that young lady being my wife's mentor. You're finishing being a wife's mentor on that too. So, but yeah, so don't worry about the title. Don't worry about the age. Have your own board of directors and have diversity within your board of directors. And so that's awesome stuff, you guys.
One thing I'd like to add too,
Yes.
From a woman's standpoint, yes, there are more women in the industry now than when I got started, but there's not a lot of us still. So find your women group as well to help you, because you're going to encounter issues that a woman can help you through. And so that's going to be hugely important, to find those women who can be advocates and who can help you through some of those scenarios. I know some of the organizations, like I'm president of an organization called IDEA, which is dealing with the scoreboard industry of all the different leagues, including CFL too, in fact. And we have a women's group, and I appreciate that so much because of what we talk about. And I just go, man, I wish I had this when I started in the industry. And so that's also something, especially for the women, I want to make sure, look for the women who can help you. And for those issues that are brought in front of you that can be there and help you through that. I think it's going to be tremendously helpful.
Yeah, Annie, thank you for mentioning that too. And that's so important. And we've, fortunately, within the last day and a half, there's been that theme, and we've had a lot of women involved in this conference, which I'm very proud of. But there's been a lot of talk about, mentoring and having advocates and sponsors. So you mentioned, having an advocate. I just thought about one of our panelists mentioning just finding a sponsor, someone who can advocate for you. So you'll find a mentor, someone who can provide you guidance, but also try to find someone who's going to be able to stand up for you, and to be able to open some doors for you. And I put in the chat, why. I think, yeah, and Nohan, added to it too. Women in sports and events, and women in sports and events. And we talked about that, I think, yesterday too. So that's another group, a women's group, as Annie kind of touched on. Okay, great stuff. So
Ron, real quick, Ron, you said something so important. Find a mentor that can speak up for you. I learned also that there's a difference between a mentor and a sponsor, right? Yep. The sponsor is one who has a seat at that table and that will actually vouch for your name there. So that's a whole nother conversation. But Ron, I love that you just said that. I learned that recently in the past 5 months that yes, there's mentors in my life, but I go back to my example earlier, I just found a sponsor at the table, right? Mm-hmm. So like, how do you foster that relationship and continue to be very authentic and genuine? Thank you for that quick little reminder of having those mentors speaking up for you.
Certainly. All right, so let's take 1 or 2 questions from our students. So if anyone wants to put something in the chat, or if you want to take yourself off mic and ask a question of our panelists. And in the interest of time, panelists, when we do take a question, I'm going to only ask for one of you to address it, so we can take some more questions. So anyone have a question for our amazing panel? Anything in the chat, or does someone want to take themselves off mic? Okay.
I have a question,
Great.
not directed towards anyone in specific, but they always say that mentoring is like a two-way street. And I find it for myself, like not having a ton of experience compared to like a mentor. How can I like present what I can offer, and like how can I be of help to someone who is more like well off in their career?
I can speak from my perspective. Since I'm a minor league team, which by the way is a great outlet to try and start a career because we're always looking for game day staff, as we mentioned. You're in classes or you're just finishing classes. So you've got your network of people as well. So as I'm looking for game day staff, if I see you present something that's really well, you can spread the word and to people you've worked with, especially if it's graduate classes, if you're doing that as well. That's a way you can bring people into our organization who can be assets as well. So people is a great way. Or if you put it out on your social media, like, hey, here's a position that's open, whether it's after you're hired or not, or after you finish that position, you move on, but you say, guys, this is a great place to work. I really enjoyed my time here. I now got a full-time job over here because of it. So you can take that and bring that to other people. That's a great way for you to help us out.
Yeah, Annie, thank you for saying that too. It just reminded me of something. So I meant to touch on reverse mentoring, as you guys were talking about not being concerned about the age. So reverse mentoring is basically, younger folks, mentoring older folks, so to speak. But then I was also reminded too, as a recruiter, and I think Myra and Nohan could appreciate this, students see us as benefiting them, potentially, but students can also benefit us because I'm out there looking for talent. If I'm coming across students who know another great student, then that, that makes my job easier too. And so you can certainly always find ways to benefit and add value to people. All right, so let's take another.
One other thing I would say is mention that too. If you are applying for a job that from someone who worked there and, obviously they left on good terms or whatever, make sure you put that in your cover letter, put it in your resume, whatever. Find a way to make sure that is known as well. Because I hired someone on our game day staff this year because they knew a person. They had a good resume, but they knew a person. So I knew exactly, they knew what was going to be involved in the job going in. So make sure you mention that as well if you find out about it from someone.
Yeah, good advice, Annie. All right, let's take one more question, and then we'll give our panelists a chance to wrap up with some parting words of advice.
I have a question.
Yes, Daniel, go ahead.
Yeah. So when you have like these 15-minute conversations with somebody that you either connect with on LinkedIn, or maybe it's just a phone call, or kind of like an elevator pitch kind of thing, what is something that maybe the interviewee or the person that you are talking to wants to hear in those like 15 minutes? Just like, we have this cliche like, oh, what do you do in your job? Like, how did you get to your position? Of course, that's something that we would want to know and want to learn about, but what is like other things that we can kind of be like, hey, like I'm very interested and I really want to know? Is it just those same questions, or?
Yeah, it sounds like you're asking how can you stand out in the informational interview.
Yeah, or like, what are things that that being in my shoes, what would you ask somebody?
Good question.
I think a lot of times we get asked about all the great stuff and not much about like what's the most challenging piece, or like what's the reality of it. I'm not saying this would be your first question, like what do you hate about your job? You know, everybody's going to have something they don't like about their jobs, but I think it shows, you know, some maturity of like, what are the challenges, or what are, you know, what are the things that you know, are not what they seem to the outside world, right? In sports, it seems like it's, you know, all fun and games, and, you know, you are surrounded by players and this and that. But like the reality is, it's like, it's really hard work, and it's very long days and long nights and long seasons. I mean, for me personally, baseball is the longest season. So, you know, you burn out. So sometimes it's nice to hear from somebody like, how are you doing, you know, or what's your challenge, or, you know, and then that can turn into a conversation of, for example, I'm trying to recruit 100 game day staff and I don't know where to start. And then you could be like, well, I have a lot of friends, and you know, just kind of like how Annie said, and there you go. Now you've provided a solution. So not only have you, you know, opened that line, but you've also helped somehow. So don't be afraid to kind of ask the questions that are a little bit out of the box.
Thank you, Myra. And I was going to add to, if you can help hook Myra up with game day staff, there you go. Do it. All right, great. Well, thank you for those questions. I'm sorry we weren't able to have more time to take more questions, but I wanted to ask our panel to wrap it up with some parting words of advice, but also as you're sharing your pieces of advice, if you could just weave in some inspiration. So one of the core intentions of this conference is to really inspire the students. And so I certainly want to hear, you know, great sound advice, but if there's any way you can kind of say something that may give our students some hope and optimism, particularly since it's been a tough, challenging job market and just a tough time in general over the last year. So we want to start off with that.
I can start. I would say from personal experience, I grew up in a very small town in Ohio. So Annie, go Cleveland Indians. Very small town in Ohio, 900 people, you know, every single person, nobody ever leaves. And so when I it sounds cliche, but I had this dream to move to LA, to work red carpets, to work with pro athletes, to do all these things. And I had no network whatsoever outside of my little small town in the farm fields of Ohio. And so I worked my butt off, excuse me, to network very, very hard in the LA area just from LinkedIn and reaching out to people, applying to hundreds of jobs. And it only takes one person to take that chance on you, and it could change your life. And so if I can be an example of that, I know everybody on this call can do the same. And it's teaching people that you are true to your word. So you're a trustworthy person. You can lead. You're not afraid to get outside of your comfort zone. You're not afraid to live in new places. You're not afraid to grow your confidence and tell people how great you are. Make sure there's a difference between ego and confidence. And know that if you do have this dream and you have the passion to go after it, you will achieve it.
Great words, Aubrey. Thank you. So who else wants to give some parting words of advice?
Um, I think for me, you know, people that have heard me speak before, I've always shared like it's important to like be a good storyteller to your journey and how do you connect. And I think for me, and I wrote it down because sometimes I go off the cuff and then I don't know what I said, so I wrote this down. But I think when we think about storytelling, everyone has stories to tell, right? Aubrey just gave us an amazing story coming from Ohio, right? And where she's at today. So I think really storytelling is a skill that can be developed as a tool and really be used and have a powerful effect. So remember that your story or the story of the product that you tell eventually should always be unique and always be authentic. It should always appeal to a sense of purpose, loyalty, you know, pride, celebration. And I think that as you put the personal touches to it of your story, where you came from or where your family came from, you know, those moments can build really the envision of where we see you at the company, right? So I will challenge you guys to always be curious, right? As you're learning to be this storyteller, be curious. Why? Not don't just be curious about developing, but be curious about others. Like learn where they came from, learn their stories, right? Like hire to your weaknesses, right? And that's what makes a team like cohesively stronger because we are contributing. So be curious and be curious in others. And I hope that you understand that and just continually keep changing the game, right? All these ladies here, Ron and myself, we know that you guys are gonna like, you know, level set even higher. And that's what we want. We want you guys to do a better job than what we've set, right? We set the bar, elevate the bar. That's what I have for you guys.
Very nice. I love that, Nohan. I love that at all. And storytelling is so powerful too. So I appreciate you saying that too. But yeah, we have lots of hopes for our students to go above and beyond where we are. Great. All right. So Annie, Amara.
I'll jump in. You know, from a positive standpoint, realize a lot of sports reduce staffs because of COVID, but we're coming out of that now. So there's going to be a lot of hiring that's going to be happening. Baseball's going to start having fans. Hockey teams are having fans now. So we're starting to open up. There's going to be a lot of hiring coming up. So keep your eyes open because it's going to be crazy and we're going to need to fill, and a lot of times fill quickly. So be ready for that. And from an advice standpoint, one of my favorite, and I know Ron's heard this before because I say this every time, but one of the favorite things a professor told me was it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So, you know, do whatever you can. I mean, I volunteered at my college. I, you know, helped record sports. It led me to, I worked for free for Fox Sports World and covered a soccer game. That led to, I saw a job posted for the Pittsburgh Pirates down at their spring training. I didn't want to work in spring training, but I said, hey, is there any opportunities up with their scoreboard team in Pittsburgh? Because I was going to school outside of Pittsburgh. That led to an interview. That led to me working the summer for them. I worked just game days for the next 2 years. And then because they didn't have a position, but then Cleveland had a part-time position, they called the Pirates and said, hey, how is this person? Hire her. I'd hire her if I had a job. So that's how I got and I was only part-time at the time. Then I became a full-time manager. Like, so it's a progression, right? It's not how you start, it's how you finish. Keep learning. You're going to get to grow. You're going to get opportunities as long as you work hard. You show that you're truly a team player. You're authentic. Just, you know, grow and learn from the people around you, because when you do get in, someone has gone through that exact same issue as you. So as we're talking about mentors and advocates, the other people in your league can be such a huge support for you, and they've been through what you've been through, no matter what, whether it's a crazy feature idea, whether it's this or that, they've been through it. So talk with them, learn from them, and they'll ask you questions too. And it's a great partnership then. So it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
Perfect. Very, very nice words. Thank you, Annie. All right, Mara.
Awesome. Well, what can I say that everybody else hasn't said? You know, Annie, the COVID related is exactly like this week. Literally, I felt like I could finally breathe. I'm like, okay, we're gonna get back to normal. So, you know, be patient, guys. It takes some time. You know, one of the things with sports is that it's such a tight community, and like I think even though we work really hard and long days, like people don't leave. But we're getting to a point where we have a lot of, you know, people retiring and people, you know, and there's a lot of knowledge there. So, you know, be curious, be yourselves. I mean, I can't stress that enough as a recruiter, you know, be your authentic self. And one of the other things that I do want to just, you know, put out there is learn about the different functions of front office. You know, a lot of times people come and they're like, I want to be the general manager. I want to be, you know, this specific role in operations. But if you're willing to learn about the functions that not a lot of people talk about, like human resources, finance, accounting, all of that stuff, you become a well-rounded person. And departments will, you know, especially for internships, they'll fight to take you because you have knowledge of the different, you know, areas. So, you know, as much as we want to focus on something, you know, for internships specifically, be willing and ready to go into kind of any department. And, you know, you guys are in a great position. Everything that's been happening in terms of social justice, things like that, is putting, you know, companies on notice of what's coming up in terms of, you know, candidates and what they're looking for. So I'm so excited to see what the future holds for all of you.
Very nice, Mara. Nice way to end it too. And so I hope that you students, as you're listening in, that you're feeling, you know, more inspired and more hopeful, and certainly that you got a lot of information that's going to really help to inform your success along your sports career journey. And so thank you very much, Myra, Nohan, Aubrey, and Annie, just for once again taking time out on your Saturday to be here with us and all the great information you shared. And so I saw that Nohan and Annie, you know, put in, you know, to reach out to LinkedIn. And, you know, certainly, you know, anytime anyone, you know, gives you that invitation, you know, I definitely encourage you to share it too. And so we definitely encourage you to just reach out to the folks you want to connect with, and they give you some ideas as to how you can best do that, you know. But, you know, I'm not gonna say more, there's a lot has already been said. So I'm just gonna end again with thank you very much to our panel.
And thanks to everyone for joining us today. And thanks to you, Ron. Appreciate it.
Yes, thanks, Ron.
Certainly.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.